Hello everyone, it's me an INFP. Thank you Nathan and Love Who for having me on your channel. It's always a special opportunity to get to collab with another channel. And today I am going to be talking about some of the misconceptions that people have about INFPs. Specifically stereotypes that may not be completely true. Number 1. The misconception that I see the most online about INFPs is that INFPs cry all the time, or that we're crybabies. Please stop saying that we cry all the time. Just stop. Unless you put $1 in the INFP jar for every time you say that, because then we're all gonna be rich. This stereotype really gets on my nerves because I see so many memes about it, and it's like, the only thing that people can think of when it comes to like comedy sketches about INFPs is that like, oh, they cry all the time, we'll just throw that in there, and like that's like the whole conception of an INFP. And to be honest, I don't think we're crybabies. I think that this stereotype is at least partly untrue. For one, because we hate crying in front of people. INFPs do not like to cry in public because they have dominant FI, introverted feeling, which means that we keep our emotions inside and we don't tend to express them externally. I know me as an INFP, I will do anything I can not to cry in front of other people. That's like one of the things I just want to avoid doing. To be honest, many INFPs tend to have a stoic look, like when they're out in public, just like going about their day. Like I know myself, unless I have like the deer in the headlights look, you don't go around seeing INFPs just losing it and breaking down and crying if you like look at them the wrong way. That doesn't happen. I almost feel like the MBTI types pick on INFP just because they're the most vulnerable and they don't tend to fight back out of the types. I don't think INFPs cry half as much as you think they do. They may tear up when they're alone. Something may touch them, positive or negative emotion. But that's not really something to like make fun of. Like, I'm sure there's things that other people do in private that they don't want people to make fun of. To be honest, like, I don't feel like I cry about emotional things like as much as you would think. A lot of the times I cry is just like watching a movie or like fictional characters or something. It's like not to do with real life. I have occasionally cried in front of other people, but it hasn't been by choice. It's like if I just like absolutely can't hold it back and it just comes out. Like I can remember an example of, I just found out my school told me that I owed an extra $1,000 for my tuition that semester, and I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. And this extroverted acquaintance of mine went up to me and said like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, I'm fine, because you know, like I'm not gonna expose my feelings, like. And then she could tell that I wasn't fine. She's like, are you sure? Like, you don't seem fine, like by the look on my face. And then I just kind of like started crying. I guarantee you that a high FE user is going to cry more in front of other people than an INFP. I have relatives who are FE users and I can vouch for that. Do INFPs cry all the time? No, not really. We may cry more easily because we feel more. In the world of psychology, crying is actually a positive thing. It's often the thinkers who like encourage this stereotype of INFPs being crybabies because they view INFPs as emotional and sensitive and they view that as weak. But crying is actually healthy for you. And doing it occasionally is actually something like therapists recommend doing. Why? Because emotional tears, onions don't count, release oxytocin and endorphins that act as like a natural painkiller to help reduce pain like physically and emotionally. So these chemicals help you feel better, and it's a natural way to reduce stress, which can have negative effects on your body. So logically, occasionally crying is good for your body and mind. So maybe INFPs are the smart ones and the people who don't cry could learn a lesson from them. Now, if you don't cry, like ever, or not for a long time, or if you're like suppressing crying, it actually activates your fight or flight response, which releases stress hormones. And this can actually heighten the negative emotion you're feeling if you're like holding in, like you're refusing to cry, and can make it worse. If you keep doing this regularly, not crying, it can actually lead to like serious health issues like raised blood pressure and negative physical symptoms. Now, tears aren't the only way to relieve stress, but it's kind of a smart way because, you know, like it's your own body basically releasing stress and like making you feel better. And I mean, it can be pretty easy, I guess. Like it depends like how easy it is for you to cry, but like you just like cry and then you're done. I feel like the people who don't cry and make fun of INFPs for crying actually have it worse off because their health may be worse. Because INFPs, if that is true, if they are regularly crying, then they're regularly relieving stress and releasing good feel chemicals and painkillers, and hey, don't judge the way they they have coping mechanisms for stress. Although, I hate the stereotype that INFPs cry all the time because I feel like that's untrue. Number 2 is the misconception that INFPs love everyone. That we're like these precious cinnamon rolls who just like dish out love to people, and we're just like, love everyone, man, like everything's good. And I'm definitely not like that, and a lot of INFPs aren't either. We don't love everyone. I don't even think all of us are necessarily nice people. I think we all have good hearts, but we don't think kindly towards everybody. FI is a judging function, which means that we can tend to like have strong opinions about things and about people. So we can dislike a lot of people. Like I know, like I've said before that like, oh goodness, saying this on YouTube, but that like, I feel like people who torture animals deserve to be murdered. I would feel like that would be justified. I'm also a highly sensitive person, and noises can really affect me and like give me stress, and really like I'm really sensitive to noises, and people in general are very loud like all the time, and I hate those people. And like the noises they make, ignorant noises, like students in college just like screaming on top of their lungs for no reason at like 2 a.m. even though they know people are sleeping. Like that is just the most ignorant thing, and like I hate those people. So I feel like I'm actually becoming less inclined towards humanity as I grow older. So I definitely don't love everyone. INFPs may feel some kind of affinity towards humanity in general, but not towards like everyone they know specifically. Or they could just have a close circle of friends who they really like, and then just kind of be like indifferent to everyone else. Or they could have like a set list of people they really don't like a set of like enemies or something. Number 3 is the misconception that INFPs cannot be organized. INFPs are infamous for being messy because of their perceiver function. And while this is partly true, INFPs can be organized in certain settings, but not in others. They may be organized in places such as like the workplace or at school, but not in their rooms or at home. This is true for me. I'm actually pretty organized at work and at school. And to be honest, I know that like some of my teachers think I'm like anal because of like how I'm always like on top of things and like emails. And to be honest, like a lot of the people I've worked with in the workplace or at school have been like very unorganized, and I actually feel like I'm more organized than like some of my bosses and some of my teachers. So like disorganization can actually bug me in those settings, and I'm like, just be organized. Like my advisor for school is an ENFP, and oh my gosh, I feel like I'm the advisor and she's the student half the time, and like I'm actually doing all the work, like for real. So pay attention to INFPs in different settings because they are fully capable of being organized. They just may not be like that all the time in all settings. Stereotype that I see a lot online as well is that all INFPs are depressed and suicidal. So just letting you know, if talking about suicide is going to be a trigger for you, you may want to skip this one and go to the next one. This is something that's seen a lot in MBTI meme groups. They just love to make fun of INFPs being suicidal or relating INFPs to suicide. For me, this stopped being funny a long time ago. I personally don't find it funny to make fun of mental health problems or making fun of someone killing themselves. Now, the types most seen in meme groups are ENTPs. So INTPs and ENTPs make up like the majority. Then there's some INTJs, some INFJs, and then a little mix of like some ENFPs and INFPs. But because the majority of them are NTs, they tend to have a darker humor. They also tend to not really know where the line is drawn. So like, for me, things are funny up until a point, and then I'm like, okay, that's not funny anymore. That's gone into like the inappropriate zone. Whereas with NTs, especially like ENTPs, there is no line, and they just go all the way and push things that, you know, I guess they find humor in it, but it's like, it's past the point of being funny. Like, I was in this one meme group for a while that started dishing out all of these memes relating INFPs and suicide. And it was like several every single day. Every meme on there about INFPs was related to suicide. And I was like, okay, this is getting a bit much. This isn't funny. This could actually be like a trigger to someone who is suffering from suicide, because it got to the point where it was like almost giving like subliminal messages like INFPs are suicidal, INFPs go kill yourself. And like, it was actually getting to that point. I felt like a mature ENTP on there actually agreed with me, so it wasn't just me that they were being immature. And okay, in meme groups, a lot of meme posters are immature. They're okay, this is not going to be about meme groups. I'm going to move on. Now, anyone can be depressed. So making fun of INFPs for being depressed, like, every type can be depressed. It is more likely to be noticed in those that have a higher feeling function, and it is most likely in introverted intuitives. This could be because introverted intuitives tend to ruminate a lot and think a lot, and that has been said to be linked to depression, is overthinking or ruminating. I feel like they tend to keep it inside more. So INFPs, ISFPs, INFJs, and ISFJs. Those with high FI, introverted feeling, NI, which is introverted intuition, and NE, extroverted intuition, may be more likely to have depression. So, as intuitives are more likely, introverts and NE, INTPs also fall into that category, as well as some ENTPs and INTJs, because of the NI and being introverted intuitive. So are INFPs depressed and suicidal? Well, as much as I would not like it to be true, there does seem to be a tendency for INFPs to report being one of the most likely types to be depressed. But there are several traits that can be linked to depression and several other things which I'm going to go over. So it's been found that depression can be linked to certain traits like people who are creative, perfectionists, highly sensitive people, and introverts. INFPs are often, well, of course they're introverts, but they're often all of those things. A lot of famous artists and writers have suffered from depression, and INFPs tend towards creative professions like being a writer, being an artist, actor, musician. I would like to read this quote I found on Reddit that's really good. It says, "Type doesn't affect brain chemistry, but it does affect the way you will cope with that and how you express it." So it could just be that the way INFPs cope with depression makes it more obvious to other people because they have higher feeling. People with higher feeling may be more aware that they're depressed, so they may show it more. I mean, like, I know, like, I don't tell anyone that I have depression, and most people don't know. Like, at best, they may think that I'm a little bit asocial and that I don't want to, like, hang around people, or that I may like to sleep a lot or something. But, like, I don't feel like most people will guess that I have had depression. So, like, the way people express depression could be a reason why people are persisting in this stereotype that all INFPs are depressed. Because of the way they talk about life, they tend to find some kind of like attraction in the darker things of life, whereas like someone who has like, let's say an Enneagram 7 who like doesn't like to talk about anything negative or like depressing things, like they would have a problem with that. So with depression, there's other things that could cause it that are unrelated to type, like genetics. If you have a relative who is depressed, you are more likely to develop depression yourself. You know, certain things in like your environment. I know depression isn't always what people expect. Many comedians are depressed, like Robin Williams, who was an ENFP. Jim Carrey is obviously going through some stuff right now. He's also an ENFP. So, like, comedians tend to hide it through humor. So, like, you may not know if someone's going through depression. Many people go through depression who aren't INFPs. When it comes to suicidal thoughts, introverted intuitives are also more likely, so that's INFPs, INFJs, INTPs, INTJs. So we're not just talking about the INFP, we're talking about introverted intuitives in general. So those other types, they may be depressed and suicidal, but they may not be showing it as much. They may even be suppressing it, like especially thinkers. Enneagram may also play a part. Enneagram 4, specifically 4-wing 5, was linked to, I don't remember if it was depression, but it was suicidal thoughts, as well as 5-wing 4s and 9s. So INFPs are the most likely type to be Enneagram 4s, so that could explain some of that, which is seconded by, I believe, INFJs are the second most likely type to be Enneagram 4s. Many INTPs are Enneagram 5s. Now, like, I've found some memes about suicide funny. Like, it was under the line, like, in a humorous way, like, whereas I feel like some people can take that to a level where it kind of feels like they're jabbing at INFPs, not just pointing out their flaws in like a humorous way and like laughing with them. Is kind of like in a sense of like they don't like INFPs and they're taking a jab at them that way. Now, of course, if you react to a meme in anything that is less than positive, you will get the reaction, "Oh, LOL, you're triggered," which is basically a shoving off of responsibility to be like, if you have any problem with this, then it's not me, it's you. You're emotional for having a negative reaction to that. And I know some INFPs have a darker humor themselves, and they don't find a problem with suicidal memes relating to INFPs, and they may find it funny, but I feel like a lot of INFPs don't. I don't. If the only thing you can think to meme about an INFP is that they're depressed, that they cry all the time, or that they're suicidal, you need to check your imagination. Come up with something more creative that actually gives some insight into an INFP's personality. Memes are supposed to be funny, right? Like, I don't want to like read memes that I'm just like, that was crappy. Like, I want to laugh. So, like, find something about INFPs that's actually funny and make a meme about it. Another thing that kind of bugs me is that all the other types have some kind of more like endearing flaw that makes it into memes. ENFPs are like, oh yeah, we flirt all the time. Like, we're like sparkly unicorn rainbows. And INFJs are like, oh, we're so rare, ha ha ha, like we think we're all special snowflakes or that we know everything. And I mean, like, those are like a flaw that's like, oh yeah, that's funny, but like I'm not really gonna be bothered by it. Whereas like INFPs are like, yeah, suicide. Like, wow. Like, how is that an endearing quality? That's just awful. Like, I feel like they could come up with a more endearing flaw than like one of those things for INFPs, because like INFPs are like endearing, come on. So basically, yes, INFPs may have a tendency towards depression, and depression has an increased risk of having suicidal thoughts. But all INFPs are not depressed or suicidal. If you're familiar with 16 personalities, whether you are turbulent or assertive could also have some effect on that. If you're familiar with the Big Five, neuroticism, having a high score in neuroticism may increase your risk of being depressed. So a turbulent INFP may be more at risk than an assertive INFP. So there's like a lot more that goes into play with this. There are many healthy INFPs who are not depressed and are not suicidal. There are assertive INFPs who are not depressed or suicidal. So do not make the mistake of just assuming that every INFP is going to be like that. Okay, I think I pretty much said all we can about that. I do want to point out that I feel like a lot of people get misconceptions about INFPs from online groups. Online groups for MBTI can often be like just a bunch of like toxic pools. Not just INFPs, all the types. All the like, well, the intuitives are the most likely to be online. There tend to be a lot of unhealthy people like swarming in those groups. So you may like join a group for INFPs and then like look around and be like, okay. And you look at these unhealthy examples and you're like, okay, well that's what an INFP is. So look around more, like look in real life, find healthy examples of INFPs. Like obviously unhealthy people of any type aren't gonna be the main example of what that type is actually like. The misconception that INFPs are not strong, that they're sensitive because they react to things, and that they're a fragile type of creature who will break. We may seem like that on the outside. We may look fragile, seem fragile. We may seem sensitive to other people who do not have our range of emotions or passion for things, but INFPs are actually surprisingly strong. They may seem to be having like existential crises every other day, but they always like rise up again, and I feel like they have a special ability to bounce back in a way. Like life throws a lot of crap at INFPs, but they always survive because they're used to doing that, of like having these moments where they fall and then they have to rise again. I feel like each time they rise a little bit stronger. And if you think an INFP can't handle something, or even if an INFP thinks they can't handle something, they will, and they do. They always survive. They are not gonna let you push them over. They may not directly fight back and push back if people are trying to control them or like be aggressive towards them. They may do it more silently, but they will do it. FI is very stubborn, and if you cross a value of ours, we will like rise up and become like a little fierce little lion. The last misconception I want to talk about is the misconception that INFPs are always quiet. Now, I talked a little bit about this in a video on my channel about how to get close to an INFP. If you get close to an INFP and INFP like chooses you as their person, they will completely change their attitude and they will become talkative. Like they won't shut up. They'll want to like spend all their time with you and hang out, and like they don't get tired of your company, which is like a huge deal for an INFP. Like they will become like a little chatterbox if like you win their trust, and like they don't feel judged and they can just say whatever random stuff that like comes into their head. So INFPs may be quiet in general, but if you get close to them and you talk to them personally, like one-on-one, then they will not be quiet. So like they can really change depending on the level of where you're at in an INFP's life. I hope this cleared up some of the misconceptions about INFPs and some of the stereotypes. Thank you for watching. Check out my channel if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see ya. Bye.